streams are up.
All right, ladies and gentlemen. Another beautiful day. It's a Saturday here. Another beautiful Saturday. We're in April. This is no April Fool. We're getting started with our turning point. Today, we have a bit of a different arrangement. We will not be with our panelists today, our youth panelists today. The four of them is, I think, exams time for a few of them, and then the others are also not this basketball game time on the weekend. But we have a very special guest today. Sele Max Foa will be joining us from Liberia, all the way in Painesville, with a very fascinating story. Some of you will recognize Sele when Sele comes on, but before we go any further, my name is Leo Napolo Johnson, and I'm your host, as always. Thanks to those who have already joined. I see some of you have already joined us. I see 9 people on here. Thank you, and please share the live if you can. This will be amazing. We'll be bringing Sele straight from Liberia. As you all know, I said we'll be doing some interesting things, right? So here we go. Thank you for joining us. Without wasting any time, we'll go straight into it because we're a bit late. I will go straight and bring Sele in. So let's get ready to bring Sele in from Liberia and see. But today we'll be talking about a fascinating story from Liberia. A young man, Sele Max Foa. Who is he? Why his story is so important? And what are some of the things that he's been up to? And his views on things in Liberia as someone who's working, living in Liberia, has been involved with so many things. Like I said, every weekend, we'll make it interesting for you here. And today we'll take some calls. If anyone wants to join on also, I will make room for that. But let's see if we can bring Sele on here live. All right, I think we are getting Sele coming in. Let's see if he can hear us. Sele, can you hear me?
Yes, I'm live. I can hear you.
Okay, you can hear me. That is great. And I can also see you as well. Can you? Yeah, so I can see you clearly. Beautiful. So thank you for joining us. Can you tell us your name, tell us where you're joining us from, and tell us a little bit about yourself so the audience can know who's here?
Thank you. So, I want to say it's a great opportunity to be on the show. My name is Selim Max Fua. I'm joining from Liberia, Painesville, the area right now that is the talk of the town with the Liberian Learning Center in the heart of the Painesville city. For my background, I prefer calling myself youth empowerment practitioner because my focus over the years has been really helping to um, develop the next generation of young people who can be the change makers, those who will not sit down but can be active participants of community interventions and cultural exchange programs. Yep.
Okay.
So basically, I think that's it for me for now.
All right. No, thank you, Sele. Thank you for the quick introduction. And maybe we can send a quick shout out before we get into our discussion here today. I see Jefferson Coco join on, Gizi Aku, Samuel Newman. Thank you for joining. Jefferson Coco say, how are you doing? Jefferson, how are you doing as well? I see Ente Miata, Stella Herring is also watching. So you better watch yourself, Sele. Ente Miata is a disciplinarian. She doesn't joke around. So, but yeah, those of you who are joining, say hello so we know you're here. We can send a shout out to you. But Sele, I brought you on because I know you well. We've talked a lot, and I know a good chunk of your story and your own journey as a young man in Liberia. But tell us a little bit, and I like to shine also the impact of the war on young people, especially young people who may not have been old enough to fully understand what was going on. Because there is this thought process in Liberia that only those who were really old enough during the war were the ones who were impacted, or those who were not born during the war are not impacted. Today, what I'm trying to do is to really show how this crisis, the impact of the crisis, the civil crisis, goes beyond multiple generations. It's not just those who are actively living and participating or not participating in the war. Even younger people who were so young or even born after the war, it's still, the impact is still haunting them. And I think a lot of Liberians forget. They think the impact is over. So today, what I'm trying to put into perspective is, tell me, Silly, tell me a little bit about the war. What's your experience, if any, of the war? How did that shape your life as a young person when it comes to accessing education and the rest of it? I'll turn it over to you. Go ahead.
Thank you. The Liberian Civil War had a great impact in my life, in the lives of a lot of other young people. I did not physically fight the war, but the war affected me as a person growing up in the way that the first 13 years of my life, I could not access education. So at the age of 13, I was still not able to really say I was in school or have been able to access education. So here am I coming to the city, Monrovia, 13 years old, and I had to sit in grade three because that was the only way at least I could be able to, connect with students who were around, kind of like around my age, even though I was the oldest in my class. But you can see literally just from that the war had a great impact in my life. Growing up, my father was also already in Monrovia and my mother was in Lofa. I grew up in Lofa. We could not connect. My parents could not connect. And that had a great impact in how I grew up. So, I mean, basically, I think that's what I would say. Long story short,
Let me
I didn't
stop you
have
there,
access
Silly.
to it. Yeah.
I think you ran through
Yeah.
this quickly. You said at age 11, you still had not started
13,
school.
13,
13, sorry. At age
13. Yeah,
13,
yeah.
you still had not
Yeah.
started school. So, 13 years of age, at least you should have been in grade 7, grade 6, grade
Seven,
7,
seven. Yeah.
if you were actually going to a school. So you started school very late. Not a Monrovia boy. Let me put it that way. Not one of those who was in Monrovia. So can you tell me a little bit? Where were you when you started school, and what type of school did you start? How was it going to school? And give me a little bit about that. Maybe you can go into that a little bit more.
So if I say I didn't have any type of education until I turned 13, I would be a little unfair. But what I can say is the education I was receiving at the time was in bit and pieces because you were sitting in a class for 1 week and the rebels would come to town and you had to run away. And sometimes it would take another. And so that was the entire process until I turned
Say,
13.
hold on. When you
And
say come to
yeah,
town, where was that? Where was that town?
Monrovia. So I came to
Okay.
Monrovia,
Yeah.
13 years old, couldn't speak well. When I try to speak, people laugh at me. So I literally
Why?
became so
Is it
quiet.
they will laugh at you because you were chopping the English? You didn't have the
No,
English
my
down at the
English
time.
was so bad. It was terrible. I wouldn't say I was chopping. It was terrible because at the time, you would not easily see people coming from Monrovia to Lofa County because I grew up on a mission. The mission was a beacon of hope for education, but at the time of the war, everything was already destroyed. So there was no way to be able to access education. There was no way to access learning, opportunities. So I was lacking behind. My English was bad, my writing was bad, and here I'm 13 years old. It, so I went to a vacation school in La Paz. It's called Barnes Foundation School. That was where I started the basic improvement program. But because I knew I was behind and I've never been able to access electricity, when I saw electricity, a funny story, I stayed out the entire night studying because I felt like I could catch up. And so that was how my entire journey started. and I started being very consistent studying and learning to read, asking people for help. And then I had double, triple promotions. But
Oh,
part of that joining, I think I will go a little fast,
yeah.
was I went to Faith Foundation School, and I remember there's this particular lady. There was no expedited program. There was no design program for me transitioning into learning how to read, to write. But there was a particular lady who took interest in me. Uh, Now she's in the States, and she said, I will teach you how to read and write. At this time, I was in Faith Foundation School. If you all know Bethel Cathedral of Hope, which is now called Harvest, Harvest, had a high
And how old
school,
are
and that
you? Say at this point, how old were you?
I was around 15.
So you're
So I
around
was around
15
15.
and still struggling
Yeah,
to
and I
to
learned.
read and write.
Yeah, and I was around 15. Now I was in the fifth grade, and I was learning how to read and write, learning the basic phonics. And so my entire education, in terms of what I missed over the years, I had to learn it in one class, which was the grade five. So within
Okay.
grade five, I learned how to read and learn how to do basic mathematics, which could carry me throughout the school years.
Okay.
Long
Finish your thought. Go ahead.
I've never really shared my story. I think you personally have been able to hear part of that story because my friends, when they meet me, they say, Max, you're so accomplished. But I usually just laughed because they don't know my story of how much effort and how much I had to sacrifice and delay my gratification going through high school, not having to do sports, not having to have a relationship, completing school within 6 years when I needed to do this in 12 years. So my entire high school was done within 6 years.
Wow. Man, I don't know. I know we overlook these things because we are from Liberia. We all live in Liberia, so we tend to underestimate what it takes to be starting to learn to read and write at age 15. I live in Canada. My son started to go to school when he was what, 4, 5. He's at 16. He's in grade 11. So imagine at 15, you're just 1 year younger than him. You were just starting to read and write. And these are the real
Mhm.
conversations we need to have because many times when people talk about the war, they only talk about people who were rebels, people who were fighting, all the places that were destroyed. But the real victims of the war, for some reason, we've paid no attention to the victims. In fact, we got more interest in seeking how many people we can put in jail for war and economic crimes code, as if to say, by jailing people, it would then cure the victims. Don't get me wrong. That might bring, it's always great to bring justice and to punish people, but what happens to the victims, right? Former President Charles Taylor was put in jail. Did that solve problem for anybody? No. They didn't even do much for us in Liberia. So I think it's about time for us to balance the equation. Yeah, let's talk about accountability for those who should be held accountable. But let's also talk about overwhelmingly about what do we do for the victims, for healing, for closure, for reconciliation. So, Sele, let's fast forward this conversation to now. Let's talk about
Mhm.
Sele Max Fuad today. Tell me a little bit. I know you run programs in Liberia. I know you're also a Mandela Washington Fellow. I know, like, walk us through a little bit what you've become. What have you been able to make of yourself after that kind of experience when it would have been difficult to imagine that you would have done anything beyond probably just trying to graduate from high school. And you're still young, by the way, with all of that still going on.
Um, so thank you so much. Let me summarize it with two very important awards that I received. One is I received an award in 2021 from the U.S. Mission in Liberia, identified as an IVLP, International Visitor Leadership Program. And if you already may be aware of that program, you cannot submit an application because you're smart. You can only get accepted into that program because of your performance that has been recognized by the UN mission in Liberia, including the US Embassy and the UNDP and all the different UN organizations in the country. So, because of the years of my work, I was able to be recognized by that program. And in 2021, I got that award. Then, forward in 2022, I got an IVLP Impact Award, one of the first two people in Liberia and across the world to receive an award from the International Visitor Leadership Program because of the distinction in the level of intentionality for the work in community and civic engagement, specifically focusing on youth work. But that was one of it. And then at some point in time, Momo Money, which is Lone Star Cell, was able to award me as one of the top 10 young people contributing to the growth and development of Liberia. Not just young people, but also have across the country more than 6,000 people who applied through that program. And I was one of the 10 persons who was awarded for that program before the Mandela Washington Fellowship. And I've been exposed to many international programs. I became a Swedish scholar somewhere in 2019. I also studied in Lebanon, exposed me to all the different opportunities, and as well as being one of the persons when I went to the U.S. as a Mandela Fellow. I studied at Drexel University in
Sele,
youth
let
and
me
civic engagement.
Sele, let me hold you there. You went to Lebanon. Of all of the accolades that you're naming, from the U.S. Embassy, from a Swedish a scholar, I don't think people realize how difficult it is from Liberia. Usually, most of these awards and stuff internationally, Liberia does not factor in at all. Most of the time, for many different reasons, Liberia is not factored into these type of awards usually. So I think it is amazing. But I want to talk about your Lebanon experience, for example, because the program you went for in Lebanon, which is surrounding mental health, substance abuse, and that kind of stuff, I think you were, if not the only Liberian, one of the few to complete that elite training program, and one of the few in Liberia that actually has that distinction and qualification to provide that kind of service. Tell us a little more about the Lebanon program.
So, thank you so much for bringing that. The program that I went for in Lebanon is currently there's a program in Liberia that is the only organized, in my understanding. There are other people who are doing amazing work that has a structured program that has to do with drug addiction recovery. So, the program was actually me living in the rehab center and experiencing the life of what it means to go through recovery if you're on drugs or you're trying to recover from drugs. Unlike formal programs where you go in a classroom, they teach you this is about drugs, this is about that. The drug rehabilitation program I went on allowed me to be able to go through the different phases. Literally, in short, I would say I went through rehab even though I'm not an addict. To understand the heart of what it actually means to go through recovery so that we come back to Liberia and help to develop the first rehabilitation center in the country. And I'm very glad that that program started. If some of you might have been there, it's in compound number 3 in Buchanan, and it is being championed by Nur, which is the Mother of Light, and now they're working in partnership with the Ministry of Health. And it was a very comprehensive program. I would just like to go through the different phases. Before you go to a rehab, there are different levels. There are some people who may not have to go to rehabilitation program, but they need prevention. And what we say is that prevention is the most efficient and better way to be able to prevent. So if you're able to stop young people from taking drugs, it's much more better and it's cheaper to be able to do that level of intervention versus trying to treat someone who has already been addicted to substances or drugs. And so the second level of the program will be the rehabilitation program. But some people who are on drugs, they're going to school, they're working, they may not be called Zogos, as we call them. They're working, professional people, some of them are going to school, but they have problem with drugs. So there's an outpatient program that you go through to help you come to terms with the reality that, hey, you are on drugs, you could become an addict. Then they also have within the program a moment where you go through something called follow up. Because once you're an addict, there are chances that you can also become an addict even though you're going through recovery. So constantly following up people, helping them to be able to understand what are the different stages, what are the do's and don'ts so that you don't go back to the life you were before is an important step in the recovery process to have that follow up. And then in that follow up program and also within the rehabilitation program, there is the reintegration where you get skills to be able to go back and know how to work. If you're a carpenter, you learn to do something with your hands. If you know how to cook, you can be able to make food so that society will accept you because you also coming back not just as someone who is free from jobs, but you also have skills that you can be able to use. So that is a very comprehensive program that I went through for 6 months in Lebanon. It was tough. Some of our colleagues could not finish. I think it was two of us who finished, but I was the only one who went through the entire 6 years, 6 months program.
Thank you. Yes.
In 20, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So, Sele, I mean, first of all, congratulations. I don't think a lot of us realize the value that these things add to Liberia, where, especially given where we are right now. I would like to switch a little bit to education in Liberia overall. As someone
Mm,
like yourself who had a very first-hand account experience with the education system, trying to go through it, but then encountering it now as someone trying to help make it better. What would you say are some of the biggest or challenges and issues that you have seen with education in Liberia? And again, from a young person's perspective, from a user perspective,
mm.
that you have seen in Liberia. And what are some of your thoughts on this? Because part of this show is to really share the perspectives and voices of younger people. We often hear the voices of ministers, politicians, adults, different opinion leaders. But there aren't a lot of spaces where young people can really give their authentic experiences of what they're seeing. And someone like yourself who have come to the United States, seeing some top universities have the chance firsthand to experience what education looks like outside of Liberia, in Lebanon, in the U.S. And, you've gone places, you've seen some of these, and then you come back to Liberia. I'd like to hear some of your own experiences and what your thoughts are about some of the major challenges of education in Liberia, but also, again, what are some of the things that you think should be or can be done?
Okay, that's a good part. So, like you mentioned earlier, I have a background in social work, by the way. But I've worked in the educational sector alongside also in health area. So I like to refer to myself as actually working in the youth development, but I work in the education and health aspects. So the problem of education in Liberia is so difficult for someone to thrive, to succeed, because one, there aren't the systems that are functional. There are existing systems that are not functional. For example, I'll be practical in that. You have a library that doesn't have books. And so we call it library. So it presents within the high schools, it presents this illusion that you have place you can go to read, but you cannot access books. And even if you do access books, those books are very outdated to the point that some of them are 1992. I mean, like something that you can relate to. Another complexity of that is that the books that may be available are books that are not contextualized to the setting. For example, you're teaching a child. Say, for example, a child you teach A for apple who've never been able to taste apple. The idea of they really being able to connect that thought of what apple looks like or how it feels like or what it tastes like may not be something that they will understand because you're only saying words of something that they cannot be able to physically connect to. It may not just be for the case of Apple because for some people in that context they've been able to see. So that's the first thing. We have lack of opportunity to access materials. Physical books, digital books has been a challenge. Then there's another challenge of the environment. No one tried outside of an environment that is conducive for learning. And that will come alongside with something I call a safe learning environment. The physical space versus the environment to know that I can ask and criticize my teacher and I will not be threatened and I will not be punished for asking critical questions. So you go into school in Liberia, the opportunity for people to be critical was not available, at least for my part, when I was going to school. And I know it hasn't changed because I've been working with schools since 2016. Um, Teachers don't want to be questioned. Most of the teachers will feel like when you question me, you are you are kind of like intimidating them in a way, or you're being rude. So, for example, Mr. Johnson, in my experience, I was quiet, not because I didn't have questions, but because I felt like when I asked questions, either the teacher would not be able to answer me appropriately, or may not be able to give me the room to know that my ideas can be heard. Okay, and then you also have the physical structures that can make students to know that, hey, I work in a classroom, I want to be able to aspire for something great, but the classroom is dirty. Almost all across the rural areas where I've worked, kids sit on the floor to learn. I mean, where in the world will you ever learn what it means to decency, what it means to sit in a comfortable chair? That is not a reality for a lot of students who are going to school. That come back to even those within Monrovia. As you already aware, in 2016 we started Write Liberia, an opportunity to be able to improve writing, public speaking, and critical thinking among high school students. With almost all the schools that participated in my program, and I realized that that was a gap in the educational system, as much as international schools, local school, private schools, all the different schools working to improve learning outcomes. There's still this gap because all I could see around that time when my colleague and I decided to start this program, people are doing essay writing. Essay writing cannot help you to be critical. And the kind of essay writing was not even the formal structural essay writing programs that can allow you to systematically be able to put your thoughts and your ideas
So,
across for
Sele, let me
people to
ask you,
understand.
right to that point, let me ask
Yeah.
you, when people write academic papers and stuff in Liberia, for example, where, for someone like you who's been through the education system, where do they get the proper books to reference citations, APA, Chicago style? Like, I'm just wondering how many students in high school or university, like, where do they get it from? How do they cite academic papers in Liberia?
I will be very frank with you. I may be wrong for some, but for my experience, people do not cite. There's something we call copy and paste. I think that is the only computer phrase that students know. You wherever you can be able to see, you copy it, you paste it. You will be shocked to realize that even teachers, then using textbook, they'll write not textbook, they'll use their notebook. Mr. Johnson, they write a notebook, and in this notebook, this one teacher has been using it for the past 5 years. That is the notes that he will be teaching all the other students. He's
Hold on.
not citing anything,
So
he's
you're
not
telling
giving
me
references.
So hold on. You're telling me the teacher makes his notes 5 years ago. He didn't cite where the
Yeah, five
notes
years.
came from or where he got it from. 5 years
No,
later, he's still teaching from
no.
the identical notes from 5 years ago.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I used to be shocked. And that is his textbook. That is what he uses as law and gospel. So even
Wow.
some of the equations are wrong, and you're trying to correct him that this is not applicable. The teacher is literally gonna argue with you. I give you an example. I started having this critical mind when I was in grade five. The teacher came to class one day, he told me caterpillar can change to butterfly. I said that's a lie. It's a fact. But
Hold
the
on.
teacher did not understand.
Hold on one second. He just came to class and decided to tell you caterpillar can change your
Yeah,
butterfly. Okay. Go ahead.
exactly. So I told him that's a lie. And even though to an extent he had no basis. So I went to the science lab. Luckily for me, there was this experiment cup. Some foreigners came to our school and they have come with this experiment cup. So I went for a week and I started looking for the caterpillar. And I did the experiment as a student in grade five. I explained it better to the teacher than he was actually teaching it. And I told him how many weeks it can take for the caterpillar to come to the place where it formed the net around itself. This is something that happened in grade five when I was learning how to just read. And I
So,
challenged
so
the
all the
teacher.
teacher expected you to do or to memorize, like he said, that yeah, caterpillar can turn a butterfly, and that's it. There's no other way to
Oh
explain
yeah,
it.
oh yeah.
Okay,
And he
interesting.
didn't even know it.
Yeah, yeah. No,
Yeah,
so
that
you
is
you
sad.
you're speaking to a bigger issue here. The issue is from your experience. What's the quality of teachers that are in our classroom? And, where are they
Oh
coming
my God.
from? Where are they getting their education from? What are they teaching young people? And, like, where are teachers being? Are they, again, from your experience, what would you say when it comes to the quality of teachers in our classrooms?
First, I would like to say shout out to those who have really paid attention to learning what it means to teach. There are very few of them in this country. The rest of them, they are experimenting. They do not have any idea what it means to teach. Somebody graduated from high school. He's looking for something to put in his pocket. He goes back to the classroom. He's just graduated from 12th grade. That young man goes back to school and starts to teach people in
Hold on. So
10th
you're telling
grade
me
and in
people who hold
11th
on, hold on,
grade.
hold on, hold on. Don't go too fast on this stuff. So you're telling me people who are just graduating from high school are allowed to go back to the school into the classroom and start teaching after graduating from high school?
Well, I will not just say allowed, but
Yeah.
for the most part, those are the most educated people in. I've visited 13 and worked in 13 of the 15 counties in Liberia. Those are the most qualified people. And maybe in the entire school, you might have one qualified teacher who is the law and gospel. So let me go to the other aspect when I talk about unsafe learning environment. This teacher might even come to the place where he start to exploit students, sleep with young girls, and no one is going to fire him because he's the only chemistry teacher. How are you going to fire this young man? He is the only chemistry teacher who understands chemistry. If we fire him, who will teach chemistry for the next 2 or 3 years? You're
Wow.
not going to have anybody teaching chemistry. This is something that is happening across all of the different places, especially in the hinterlands within
Wow.
Liberia. It's a challenge, and we have to be practical. And I don't think it has actually changed, even given this present reality. There are people who are doing well, but for the most part, those are the constraints.
Yeah. So I'm going to ask another question. I'm going to pivot a little bit here, moving away again. Like you said, kudos to those who are out there, qualified, competent people in Liberia who still keep making the ultimate sacrifice to try and solve some of these problems. But let me come to those of you or people who get scholarships or who travel abroad to go and study, right? Whether United States or Europe or Canada or Asia or China, wherever else they go. You go to these countries where there are very sophisticated systems of education, right? And boarding systems a lot. And you learn all of these things. And then you come to Liberia where we're still living in 1940 in terms of how behind we are with our education system and even our working systems where you work. You go and learn on sophisticated softwares how to become an engineer, for example. Let me give it that way. And then you come to Liberia, they're still drawing the house plan in pencil and on paper. Whereas what you learn. So from your experience going to the United States, doing the program with the Yali program and coming back, do you feel Liberia offers the environment for those going abroad and studying and coming back? Do you think the environment is available for them to exploit the knowledge and the levels? Because you're also learning in the systems and cultures of these countries, right? If you go to China to study engineering or whatever, most of the designs and architecture is going to be based on Chinese engineering, Chinese architecture, or so. If you go to the United States, same. To Europe, same, right? And we're way behind. So, what has been your experience going to the U.S., learning everything you learned, and then coming to Liberia? Do you feel like the environment has been offered for you to be able to really put all of those things that you've learned to use?
That's a very important question. I have two opinions on that. The first unpopular opinion is before you decide to go to school anywhere outside Liberia, develop context within your country, work, understand how your system works. Then when you go outside, what you're going to be getting is not just an education. You're going to get something I would refer to as inspiration. You're not expected to come and copy and paste. And that has been the reason why most of the programs that have been pioneered by people who spend hundreds of years or whatever that could be, come back to Liberia may not be able to really provide intervention that will be practical, relatable, because what you're learning cannot meet the realities on the ground. You learn on machines, now you come to the hospital where people are using flashlight to be able to do surgery. I have friends who have studied in sophisticated areas as medical doctors, and then they come back, they go to local country to work, and they got to use flashlight to do surgery. How, with all the machines you've learned to use, how is that going to be used when you don't even have electricity? So you see, it becomes really difficult. So there's that challenge. You've learned everything, but you cannot apply it to your country. As much as you're very sophisticated and educated, but your sophistication has also brought you to the place where you are illiterate to your context. The illiteracy in that context for me would mean that you know so much, but what you know is not useful. I read something that was written before. And it says, what you know is only useful when it's used to benefit others. When you've learned so much, it's not going to be a benefit to the community that you're serving, then basically what you've learned is, to me, useless. You are knowledgeable, but your knowledge cannot be able to provide deeper insights and provide solutions to the community that you're in.
Yeah, so the way I usually put it is that Liberia is educating people for everywhere else in the world except Liberia, right?
Mm.
My argument has always been that with all these countries coming to Liberia and wanting to give scholarships, right? Whether it's China, it's Europe, wherever it is, European Union want to give, I still can't understand why they are giving us so many scholarships and spending tens of millions of dollars, but will not help us fix LU or UL, or will not help us build a state-of-the-art technical college or technical university right in Liberia, and help us with faculty for the first 5 years that can train faculty, or will not help us build a state-of-the-art teachers training college. When we keep complaining that we don't even have teachers in the country, but our partners are willing to spend tens of millions of dollars to send people outside the country. That's why every time I hear about a new scholarship scheme, it's like my stomach boils on the inside, because I'm like, okay, you're going to take all these young people, send them away to get to learn in sophisticated institutions, and then when they come to Liberia, it doesn't work, because the system that I assumed that's supposed to be in place for those things to work, it does not exist. I will give you a practical example. In Canada, I do a lot of fundraising, right, as a fundraiser. But the Canadian system has something set up they call tax deductible receipts or tax deductible systems, where if somebody at the end of the year, they had to pay, a rich person had to pay $1 million to the government in taxes, and because of how much money they made in a year. And the government said we have a system in place that if you pay $500,000 or 600 or 700,000 of that money to charity, to a registered charity, we will waive the rest of your taxes. So that person has an incentive to contribute to my cause as a registered charity. But then let's say I'm a prolific fundraiser. I'm so good at what I do. And then I go to Liberia to try and raise funds. Now I've been trained to be a fundraiser. I did so well here. And then go to Liberia to try and fundraise. There's no tax deductible system there. There's no system where a millionaire can give you money and the government waive their taxes. There's no structure around how donations from wealthy people can be facilitated. So it's almost like, why are we not talking to our partners to give some of this money or to use some of this money right in Liberia and build quality institutions? Not everybody will travel. So what happened with our young people who don't get the opportunity to travel to China or to travel to Europe or to travel to the United States or wherever? So what becomes of them? Are we saying nothing for them? Or so, or where do they go? But let me ask you, in your particular case, Sele, how have you been able to contextualize, since you talk about context, your education, your exposure and experiences in the United States since you came back to Liberia?
Okay, that's a very good question. So, when I came back from the United States,
Can you tell us
I've
a
been
little bit, Sele,
exposed to.
what did you do in the U.S.? Which school were you affiliated with, and what did you do there? And then you can answer the other question.
Okay, so I went to one of the top schools in Philadelphia. It's called Drexel University, and I did an executive style leadership training program in youth and civic engagement. I will categorize it on a nonprofit intervention. And the thing is, besides the classroom learning, we are also exposed to the community where we meet high level civic engagement leaders. And we also met organizations that are doing very amazing work. Now, you come back to Liberia, then you're asking yourself, what, what are the facilities for me to be able to work in and bring in this kind of innovation? The only thing you can do, which I started to do before I got connected, was to continue to develop my own interventions programs that I do on weekends. By the way, every weekends I run this servant leadership program where I believe that the next generation of leaders who will be able to lead a country to be people who are serving from their hearts and not people who want to be praised and celebrated because they build a well or they constructed a little hand pump. They should do it from the bottom of their heart because they need to serve. So that is one of the things I started to do. But that is just a fraction of the things I learned. And so the my knowledge is at a level that is a system level. But then the environment within the country is very limited until the Liberian Learning Center was being constructed, giving me an opportunity to see system level interventions happening across the place. One, there's a there's an environment where you can have young people coming across a network. You also have a physical structure that allows innovation, creativity, and critical thinking. And so for me, my case might be different because now I am supporting and working within the Librarian Learning Center, having access to the resources, the network, the opportunities to be able to thrive, and actually just begin to try some of the things I've learned from the US and other places. But until then, I was just literally not using much of the things I've learned over the years. Yeah, and now I'm forced to think and to innovate, to create new things, and to be intentional about the work I do across all the different programs I'm working with. I'm not hearing you.
Sorry.
Yeah,
You can hear me now?
yeah.
Yeah. No, I was saying now that since I have you here, we'll go a little bit into the Liberian Learning Center conversation here because I've shared this story quite a few times with different people, but also I've been live and talking about it. And I think it would be good to reflect on it a little bit with you here. And I know,
Mhm.
let me give some shout out to those watching. We'll take a quick shout out break here to Jefferson Coco again. Mr. Jerry Buddy, our board chair for the Liberian Association in Canada. Welcome. He said, yes, in grade school, I know of our sister high school whose principal was a high school graduate. So, Silly, this is not a just now problem. This
Mhm.
is a long time ago problem. As you can see, Mr. Badi is telling you he graduated from high school no Monday. I will not call it a
Mm.
share, but I'm just saying. So for a very, very long time, we have been in this situation, even when we thought the country was at a great place. But also we got Ente Miata say, could you all please stop calling my country Liberia? Please, my country name is Liberia. Okay. Ente Miata, Liberia. Gisi Akuse, I'm really impressed with the program, Mr. Leo. Thank you, Gisi. Say Silas Pence, say Leo Likwele Nipolu Johnson. Hi, thanks for such a beautiful inspiration. Jeremiah, my nephew here, who I need to call him, I see a problem with him. Say hello, I'm watching from Lagbasi community. Okay, but let's get to the Liberian Learning Center. So that you know, when I came to Liberia, and you saw me very early when I come back to Liberia 2010, 2011, and talk about this big Liberian Learning Center dream that we had to build. It's funny how everybody said they didn't think it was possible. And they were not coming from a bad place, by the way. Most of them were coming from the place of saying something like this has never been done in Liberia because we said we wanted to build an energy efficient building where the current would never go off. Those of you in Liberia, you know what we mean when we say LEC can go. We wanted to build a building where LEC can never go off. That means electricity would never go off. We wanted to build a building that took advantage of our natural environment, but also was as modern and could compete with any infrastructure anywhere in the world. And you know, I'm so pleased today to say that, in fact, there is a plan to put the Learning Center up for the Global Innovative Libraries Award as we speak right now, globally. That's one.
Mhm.
But two, guess what? We accomplished it. We didn't just build a building, but we built it out of dirt bricks. We didn't just build it out of dirt bricks, but we accomplished the fact that for the last 3 months you've been running Sele. How's the electricity? Let me ask you so you can speak for our viewers here to hear. How's the electricity so far? What's been your experience for the last 3 months that we've been open and running?
So the first question the users will ask is, what are you using? Is it LEC? Because the current don't go off. We said no, this is not LEC. How come the internet everything is on? and then we tell them we're using the solar power. In fact, since we opened, except for I think the first week or so, we're using LEC to still set up the place. We've been on the solar power, and it has been very on. We haven't had any incidents where the current will go off for 5 seconds, 5 minutes. Um, the electricity is such a way. I like the way the engineer said. The guy is like, oh, I'm monitoring it from my phone. I can be lying in my house. I can put it on. I can call it off. I'm like, wow, this is amazing. So we have the Liberian technicians who are monitoring the electricity, the solar power from the comfort of their telephone, from their homes, and we've not had any issues of it going off for the past for the next for the past 3.
Super. So I got scared one time when I was working there, and I was sitting, and the whole place just went black. So my heart, you can just imagine my heart kind of leaped in my church, in my chest. Because I was like, oh my God, don't tell me current gone. But then I realized quickly that in fact, you design these things on paper when you're building it, you forget that we had designed the lights to be energy saving lighting system. Where if nothing moves, if you're just sitting quiet for close to an hour and nothing moves, all of the lights go off automatically because it saves power. And then I woke up because I was about to lose it to pick up my phone to say, how come light is gone? Because I've made this big muff that the light would never go off in the learning center. And then I woke up and then the lights came on. I was like, because in Canada, that's what I'm used to. In Canada as well, we got a lot of those energy saving lighting system where the light will go off and when nothing moving, it's sensors, the sensor base. When they feel something moves and the light is on. But if somebody forgot the light and went home, forgot it on or whatever, and it felt like it was quiet, the lights will go off automatically. And then something else happened. The lights outside of the building in the corridor there outside. I was like, okay, where do they turn these lights on or turn it off? I couldn't find it. Later did I find it again. We designed it in a way that it's set, the sensor is set to the rising and the setting of the sun. When it
Yeah,
senses that the sun has set, the lights come on automatically. When it senses that the
exactly.
sun has risen and is getting brighter, the lights go off automatically. But again, a lot of people said these things were not possible in Liberia, Sile, and it breaks my heart. I will say it today. When people keep boasting that this is the only one of its kind in the country and the first one, Sile, it took us 12 to 13 years to bring this building into fruition. It was my prayer that this building would have been the third, the fourth, the fifth, or the sixth, so that all our partners and the people with the big money that can come around in Liberia, all these big names we can hear, would have built something of this nature. Again, I thank God that it is the first one, but I'm not happy that it is the first one because Liberia deserves better. We need to go further. But let me come to the user experience now, City. Since you've been experiencing people using the space, what have you seen? And what are some of the things that have surprised you, some of the things that have confirmed what you thought, and some of the things that you never imagined could have been possible?
They the first thing that surprised me is there's this notion in Liberia where I say Liberian students like reading.
No, they can
So
say like Liberians as a whole. They say Liberian people can't read. Liberian people not let her read.
okay. So the students across the street, effort back, those kids would come from school and run to the library to read. And for the for the first 2 months, I'm like, maybe they are coming for something. But I realized that these kids will actually come to sit and read. And then they will go to the staff and be asking them questions. Can you help to pronounce this word for me? Can you help to read this for me? And I saw the curiosity that was coming from the students, and I like, whoa, this place is actually creating an opportunity that has not been available to these students. And one of the other shocking thing is our data. In fact, we have a data collection system that allows us to know where in Liberia students are accessing the resources from the library. We got to realize that the learning center have students coming from as far as uh, Fingers Village, and the majority of the people who were using the space at the time, they came from Fingers Village. I'm like, wow, we're in Pinsville, and these students are coming from all the way to Fingers Village to access the resources within the library. It tells you the gap level that can push them or encourage their parents or the authorities of the school to say, let's take our students to the library. Another very interesting thing is, even though we are not teaching computer, we are not teaching IT now, even though we have plans to be able to do that. The data shows that Majority of the young professionals who are coming are IT professionals. Young people who are building their website, young people who are coding, and they're using this space. So I went to a couple of them and asked, why you guys use this space even though we are not giving you right now training? And the guy's like, first, you have stable electricity. Second, you have internet. So those are the two most important things that we need to be able to do our work. And then we also have access to get a computer when we don't have computer. So those are the three things that make them to come to the center. In our center, when you come, you don't have a computer. We give you the computer. You can use it within a day. When you're done, don't carry it to your house because somebody else will need it. And they are using the space for those kind of different opportunities, which is really, really amazing to me. And I think it's really gonna be life transforming. I can even quote some of the users saying, "This thing will make me a millionaire." Yesterday, one of them saying like, "Hey, this place will make me to become a millionaire." In my head, I'm thinking, "How? We're not giving you money." And he's saying, "The space I have to work, the network of friends I meet, it's just going to create unlimited opportunities for me to be able to do great work within my country and right from Pinsville."
Thank you, Silly. And it's amazing that you say that. And I think the one thing I would like to ask you, as someone who in the space every day, going through the materials, all that we've been very careful with the kind of quality of education materials we're bringing in. What are their books? What are their computers? Because for a long time, people have treated Liberia like a dumping site, right? Where you take anything there. They say because the place is so nothing to the place so poor, so you take anything there. So I can firsthand say we went out of our way to get the best of the best. And majority of the books that we've sent in the space so far were purchased directly from publishers, right? Because we don't want to end up in a situation. A lot of people have been calling me, "Oh, Leo, can I donate books? Can I do this?" And I've been saying no. We don't want to end up as another dumping site. We're curating an actual book list and how old the book can be. Those books you've been keeping for the last 7 years or 10 years in your drawer, in your closet, or wherever that is, we're not a dumping site for it. If you want to help us with book, buy the books. We're curating the list of books that we need to purchase so that you can buy one book, you can buy two books. Don't bring the old books that you no longer want to read and then you claim that they are all good books, but they are 10 years old or they are 20 years old. Or some of them were the books you read when you were young that said there were 9 planets in the solar system. Scientists know that there aren't 9 planets in the solar system. There are unlimited planets in the solar system. So I would like for you to tell me a little bit of the quality of the materials that you've seen in the space, from tables to decks to chairs to books to computers, because you've had a first hand of using some of them and experiencing some of them. What is your feedback? What do you think?
The first thing is the computers are high speed. Allow you, I think that's one of the reasons why creatives would prefer to use our computers at the center because they are high speed, fast to use. Like there are some computers that are very slow. Using those 1980 and then the storage space, the RAM, and all of that. You know about computer. So the computers are high speed and they're all one brand. Very high quality computers that you don't have to worry about anything about. Then we also have the local materials that we use, the decks. They're all locally produced, but they are very high quality. If you enter in the space, you see that there's a wooden chairs and even with the round cycle where the students can sit, study. All of those things are high quality. Going from the decks that we're using, because the space is built in a way where you can move anything and use the space for anything. So our desk, you can literally just roll it, use it to one space, and then roll it and use it to another space. So those decks that are not locally made are also movable so that the space is customized based on the different events and the different facilities, activities that you want to have. Even the headphones we're using, they are all high quality, and there's a lot of intentionality behind it. Funny story. I was telling one of the young guys that the building also collect rainwater. Like, what, in Liberia collecting rainwater? I said, yes, especially now that the rainy season is coming, we'll be harvesting the rainwater so we can use it, within the building. So there's a lot that the building has provided. The mud bricks. I had an argument with one of the guys. I like, this is not the Firestone bricks. This is the mud bricks, because when we did this Because me knowing this story, knowing that we studied 13 of the different counties in Liberia to understand how the people built. So the mud bricks are complex bricks, but they are not what you call the Firestone bricks. I don't know what they do with the Firestone bricks, but they are original mud bricks, but they are just compressed in a way that this is how our interior people built to allow the building to be sustained against all kinds of things, pests, ants, even bullets, and even cold season and warm season to know at a certain point in time when the building will be cool inside or warm outside. All of those things are taken into consideration. I see as a high level uh, innovation, but also it's culturally sensitive because it's one thing to borrow something, but it's another thing to make sure it fits within the context of what the building is. There's no upstairs, but the roof of the building is high, allowing us to make sure that the sun does not come directly to us, doesn't hit us that way, but air can come through the building. Right now, we don't have AC all throughout the building, but there is not that level of heat that can make you feel so uncomfortable that you don't want to sit there. Because if that was the case, the visitors, the users who come to the space and use it from morning all the way to 6, 7, 8 o'clock, who don't want to go home, who have been very uncomfortable. Even though we're gonna be able to customize most of those things to increase the comfort level. But I think the building is very intentional in terms of all the different materials and everything that is used there.
Yeah. No, and what would you say about the books, for example, some of the texts we've been bringing, educational materials? Because that's the question people always ask. Oh, what kind of books is it? From what you've seen so far?
So we have books on different subjects and different categories, and they are being cataloged. And the books are very new. I can't remember the series, but it's this series that talk about different countries. You can see facts and information on Ghana,
Oh,
Guinea,
is the I
Nigeria.
think is the
Those,
war I think it's the World Political and Economic Atlas. Yeah.
yes, and they are very new. Like you can see, just what you're confirming now. Those books are new. Literally being part of the process or unpacking the books from the barrel, making sure they get on the shelf, and also helping the team to catalog them within the system. Because all of our books, as although they are all physical books, but also have them, you know, in our digital system. So the books are new. They are clean. We call it clean sheets. Even recently, there are some donations. We got books by Madam Ellen Johnson Sirleaf. All those books were given directly by her, and we have them in the center. We got books from Barack Obama, books on Michelle Obama, all of those different things, and historical books. Even books that are for some people who are religious people, we got religious books, dictionaries, and things that you want to go and do fact check because we want it to be a comprehensive space where anyone can feel welcome to do research
Yep.
and get quality. And they are recent books. Those books should be around less than 5 years.
Thank you, Siri. And I know one of our pioneers, Mark Jones Stewart, is watching the live. He said, "Great work, Leo and Silly. Great work, Mr. Mark Jones Stewart. We're still waiting to give you a Liberian passport. My brother Mark is from Canada here, but has been one of the long-standing, staunch supporters of the Liberian Learning Center and Empowerment Square as a whole, right from the beginning. In fact, Mark have slept in some places where some of you who live in Liberia have never slept, just so you know. He's gone to the well to draw water 11 o'clock p.m. at night because LEC were gone, water gone, nothing can come out. So just so you know, we're only waiting to officially hand him his Liberian passport. But so let's go to our
The
last
Canadian Liberian man.
Exactly. And Mark can actually eat pepper more than some of you ordinary like Liberians, just so you know. But we will go to our last segment here. And for those of you who have questions, it's okay to put your question in the chat also. I'll be able to read it out. Questions for Sile, questions for me. Put it in the chat as we go to our last segment of the show. And this is where I come to what's on your mind. This one is pretty open-ended. What are some of the things that are on your mind? What are the things that are bothering you or things that are making you happy? About Liberia, about your personal life. Mark gone to a Liberian English on the chat here. He say he see you. So just so you know. But what's on your mind about Liberia, the future of Liberia, the reality in Liberia, or anything else? It is really up to you. This is the open-ended segment. What's on your mind? So I turn it over to you to get started with what's on your mind, Silly.
There's a lot of running through my mind. I've one of the first thing is every time I travel, leave the country, I will always have somebody asking me, "Are you staying here or are you going back to Liberia? Are you going back to Liberia or you're staying here?" One of my friends from the French-speaking country would say, "Liberia, are you going back to Liberia?" I'm like, "Yes, I'm going back." And the way I say it is that there's a lot more that is needed in the country than I will be able to do outside of the. Although that is still something that brings that level of saying what's really there. To be honest, if you really systematically study the country and see the different things that happen, there's not a lot that is working. From healthcare to education to agriculture to tourism. Let me just touch on tourism a little bit. You hear somebody say, "Oh, we're making Liberia tourism sensitive," or whatever we mean by that. But then from here to Rabosco, the roads are not paved. It's one of the most beautiful places in Liberia, but you don't have access to go. You don't have public transport. There's a lot we're struggling with. So even the ecosystem for young people to thrive and succeed outside of politics is very limited, if not almost impossible. Sometimes the struggle is so frustrating to the point that every young person you speak to wants to leave this country. And I think we are still in an emergency state, which shouldn't be. And we should be at a point where now we will be considering ourselves as people rebuilding and reconstructing. And part of one of the things I say is that after the war, the country has not been able to answer one fundamental question. Are we rebuilding or are we just, building upon the bricks that have already been broken? What can the country do when the foundations are destroyed? The way I say it in my mind, I feel like when the foundations are destroyed, you have to make sure you build from scratch. Liberia should be used as a case study and say there's a lot of resources, there's a lot that's not working. Let's build the educational system, understanding exactly what our problems are without copy and pasting curriculum from one place to another. For example, having the competence-based curriculum that teachers don't know how to use. And you have it on paper that there's a lot of resources that have been invested by UN institution or international organizations, but yet we do not have the manpower, the human resource to be able to really operationalize those materials. So that's really a lot on my mind. And as a young person, I continue to reflect on the future of our country. I keep asking, where are we headed to? What are the systems that we're building? And the systems that we think we have, are they really practical? Let me give you one practical example. When you go to the interior, the places are clean because in the interior, everybody is being told you're supposed to keep your environment clean. When you come to Monrovia, it's different. The question is, where did we learn to make the country filthy? When in the rural areas, everywhere is clean. You wake up first thing in the morning, everybody will clean their yard. That's why the town keeps safe and nobody's going to question. But we come to the city, everybody is a politician. Everybody is someone who understands so much, and no one wants to listen to anybody. So the streets are dirty. And because if you clean the street and you're expecting someone else to come and clean it, or you dirty the street expecting someone else to clean it, it's never going to be clean. So even when we talk about hygiene, we talk about healthcare, what is the system that is supporting that we're going to have people living healthy lives when the small little things that should be within our environment are not taken into consideration with more intentionality. Um, of course, education is on my mind. I'm still yet to see what exactly we're doing with our educational system. And every time I wonder, what are we really doing in the offices? Because there's a great contrast with the papers that we write, the policies that we write, versus the reality on the ground. When you go to the classrooms, you see 100 students in one class, 75 high school students in grade one. Grade one of the schools I went to recently, just 3 days ago, 75 high school students in one in one class, in one teacher. Why we headed? And this is a government school. And the question remains, what is the country heading to? And what are the different things that we can do in a more practical way to say, hey, these are the little things we can do. And in the next 5, 10 years, this is how the country is going to move, you know. Um, I think if we can start thinking long term, we can rebuild Liberia. Not start thinking about let's let's do it today and then tomorrow. Yeah, that's it. Then the people just go to school. You know that that idea. Then they just go to school one day low learn. You know, it doesn't happen like that. And I think if there's no intentionality around that, it's gonna cause a lot more harm than good.
All right. No, thank you, Celine Max Fua. It's been an amazing time with you joining us from Liberia, Pinsville. I mean, you can see the system worked very well. Also, special shout out to our tech person here, Dave. Dave Tivador has been working hard. So, all of you who are being thankful for the show, how clear it is and how nice it is, thanks to Dave behind the scenes, who you don't see. He's getting us all fixed up here. Every week we're getting better, and we're hoping as we go along, you will continue to enjoy it. And thanks to everybody who joined today as well. Mark Stewart, I'll read your last comment. Mark said you're doing a great job of explaining the extensive depth of thought that has gone into all aspects of the Liberian Learning Center. So that's a shout out to you. Shout out to everyone from Liberia. Pretty soon, we're working hard to be having the program relayed on the radio in Liberia. So you don't worry, we're working on that pretty soon. But thank you, everyone. It's been an amazing time. And this is what I will say to everyone as we close here, that the responsibility to rebuild, the responsibility to reimagine Liberia is Liberians. Nobody's coming from anywhere to save us. The United States will not save us. China will not save us. USAID will not save us. The European Union will not save us. The sooner we can realize this and set out to do what we ought to do within our means, the longer our problems will persist. And an important part of that equation would be the efforts and voices of young people. The more we alienate them, the more we marginalize them, the more impossible it will be for us to resolve our issues. So I hope we can be intentional as a country, as a people, to continue to elevate the voices of young people, to elevate the efforts, the work that they're putting in, but to also encourage them to aspire as a country. With that being said, enjoy your weekend, and the next week we will be here again Saturday next week at 11 a.m. with another episode of the Turning Point Talk Show. Have a good one. And Sile, any final words before we let you go?
There's a famous statement I say: it's better to be prepared and for an opportunity and not have one than to have an opportunity and not be prepared. I consider this moment as a preparation period for what is ought to happen in Liberia and the contribution that we can make to our motherland. Thank you, everybody, for the support, and thank you for inviting me.
All right, everyone. Enjoy your weekend, and it's been great being your host here, Leo Napolo Johnson, coming to you live from Hamilton in Canada. Bye-bye.